Number 7. Anna Kimai. A 24-year-old woman was charged with assault after she took off her mask and purposefully coughed in her Uber driver's face. Anna Kimai and 2 other female passengers became embroiled in a heated argument with their driver, Shubaka Kadka, on March the 7th of 2021. The situation devolved into a physical altercation after Kadka kicked his passengers out of the car. The driver had picked the 3 women up in San Francisco, California, at about 12:45 in the afternoon. A few minutes had passed before the driver realized that one of the passengers wasn't wearing a face mask, and he pulled his vehicle to the side of the road. He told the women that he couldn't continue the Uber ride unless all 3 of them were wearing masks. In compliance with state and local public health mandates, the passengers became belligerent, and Kimai then took off her mask to shout at Kadka. As the 32-year-old Uber driver attempted to ignore the women's verbal onslaught, Kimai leaned over the driver's seat and coughed aggressively in his direction. She then pulled off his mask and stole his phone, to which Kadka responded by yelling at them to leave his vehicle. He eventually got his phone back and the passengers exited the car. The entire dispute was captured by the driver's dashboard camera. During the video recording, one of the women can be heard shouting, "I've got corona," as they continued to taunt Kadka. Kimai turned herself into the San Francisco Police Department, and she was ultimately charged with attempted robbery and assault. Today's featured fan shoutout is Instagram follower Pooh Bear. To appear in our next video, send us your pic rocking the latest merch from theywillkillyou.com and send it in to us on Instagram today. Number 6. Heidi McKinnon. Heidi McKinnon was arrested on May the 8th of 2016 at Portland International Airport after having arrived there from Las Vegas on an Alaska Airlines flight. McKinnon was accused of having smuggled alcohol on board and licking and groping a fellow female passenger. According to the assistant U.S. attorney, McKinnon had acted with intent to humiliate and harass the victim. Not only had she groped the victim, she also bullied her to drink the alcohol that she had snuck on the plane with her, took photos of the victim, attempted to kiss the victim, and called the victim poor while bragging about her own supposed wealth. According to McKinnon, she had recently been to rehab to battle her drinking habit, something that could explain her deplorable behavior. A fellow passenger also declared that McKinnon was indeed drunk. McKinnon was facing 10 years in federal prison and a fine of $250,000, but ultimately received 3 years probation. Number 5. Danuka Silva. In October of 2019, an Uber passenger was fatally struck by a police car after he fled the vehicle he was in and ran across the 101 freeway in California. The deceased was later identified as Danuka Silva, aged 30. According to the Uber driver, Silva had gotten into an altercation with another passenger sitting in the front seat. The 2 men had reportedly been picked up in West Hollywood at approximately 3 a.m. During the subsequent Uber ride, they began physically fighting with one another. The conflict escalated after Silva began choking the other passenger. The driver attempted to break them up, but the 2 men, who were purportedly friends, continued punching each other repeatedly. The Uber driver eventually pulled his vehicle over to the side of the highway and contacted the police. As they awaited the arrival of law enforcement, Silva exited the car, jumped over the center divider, and began roaming the eastbound lanes of the roadway. He then stepped in front of a patrol vehicle that was responding to the altercation which had occurred inside the Uber. Paramedics were dispatched to the scene, but Silva ultimately passed away from the injuries he'd sustained in the collision. The officer suffered minor lacerations to his left arm. Number 4. Anthony Devonte Williams. On the morning of February the 3rd of 2020, a 33-year-old man opened fire on passengers of a Greyhound bus in Kern County, California. A witness later told the authorities that he noticed the shooter, a Maryland man named Anthony Devonte Williams, attempting to speak to everyone on board the bus before his outburst. The passengers ignored Williams, and the man subsequently raised his voice while talking to himself. The situation escalated when a man got up to use the bathroom and Williams ordered him to sit back down. Williams then announced, "I'm gonna shoot," before firing indiscriminately in the direction of the helpless passengers. 5 people were injured, while one victim, identified as 51-year-old Lurbis Elena Vence, suffered multiple gunshot wounds and passed away at the scene. A passenger disarmed Williams and the bus driver rushed to the next exit, where he was then forced off the bus. Upon being notified of the attack, California Highway Patrol tracked the suspect down and arrested him without incident. Williams was ultimately found incompetent to stand trial and was referred to Kern Behavioral Health in order to undergo a mental health evaluation. He was reportedly deemed competent in November of 2021, and a hearing was scheduled for December the 2nd to review his case and determine the next steps in the legal proceedings. Number 3. Stella Yey. A college student was run over by two oncoming vehicles as she wandered across a San Diego freeway in the early morning hours of May the 12th of 2018. Stella Yey, aged 19, had reportedly been drinking with friends in the hours leading up to her death. She was too intoxicated to drive, so an Uber was called to pick the teenager up and take her back to her dorm on the San Diego State University campus. At one point during the ensuing ride, Yey vomited on the vehicle's dashboard. The driver promptly pulled off the freeway and ordered the young woman to exit the car. Yey conformed to the request and subsequently called for a second Uber ride. When the driver arrived at her location, he found her stumbling down the freeway ramp and reportedly refused to let her inside his vehicle. Minutes later, Yey staggered onto the highway and was struck by two cars driving in the southbound lanes of Interstate 805 at about 1:30 a.m. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Yey's family filed a lawsuit against Uber, claiming the two drivers involved failed to uphold their duty to properly care for the young woman. A superior court judge ruled that Uber's employees should have looked after Yey until she was discharged at a safe location. The company's assertion that they held no responsibility for Yey's death was rejected by a state court judge in San Francisco. Number 2. Dontarius McGee. A Lyft driver named Brandy Luttrell was kidnapped, robbed at gunpoint, and shot 7 times by a 17-year-old passenger of her vehicle. Luttrell had picked Dontarius McGee up from an apartment complex in Jackson, Mississippi on November the 2nd of 2021. Upon arriving at his destination, McGee pulled out a gun and ordered the driver to get into the back seat. He demanded Luttrell give him her debit cards, bank account information, as well as the passcode to her phone. Fearing for her life, Luttrell did as her armed passenger ordered. McGee then drove her Dodge Journey to a remote wooded area. As the Lyft driver crawled into the woods, the teenager proceeded to shoot her a total of 7 times. McGee fled the scene, leaving his wounded victim to bleed out in the middle of the forest. Luttrell miraculously survived the attack and managed to gather the strength to run to a nearby apartment complex. She was then taken to the University of Mississippi Medical Center, where she remained in recovery the following week. McGee was arrested later that evening at his place of work. He admitted to carrying out the attack and was charged with kidnapping, carjacking, and aggravated assault. Number 1. Vince Lee. A 22-year-old man on board a Greyhound Canada bus was beheaded and cannibalized by a fellow passenger on July the 30th of 2008. The victim was Tim McLean, a carnival barker from Winnipeg. He was returning home after working an event in Edmonton at the time of the brutal attack. Just before 7 p.m., the bus departed from a stop in Manitoba with a new passenger, a Chinese-Canadian man named Vince Lee, aged 40. Although he'd initially taken a seat near the front of the bus, Lee moved towards the back and sat next to McLean after a scheduled stop. McLean was sleeping with his headphones on when Lee suddenly pulled out a large knife and repeatedly plunged it into his neck and chest. The bus driver pulled over to the side of the road and fled the vehicle, along with the rest of the passengers. Lee locked the doors of the bus and then used his knife to decapitate McLean. He held the victim's severed head up to the window, displaying it to the horrified passengers standing outside. Afterwards, Lee returned to McLean's body and ate some of his flesh. Members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived at the scene at approximately 8:30 p.m. By that point, Lee was trapped inside the bus as the driver and 2 other passengers had barricaded the doors with a crowbar to prevent the perpetrator from escaping. The driver had also engaged the vehicle's emergency immobilizer in order to keep Lee from driving away. The suspect continued to consume portions of McLean's flesh while special negotiators attempted to communicate with him. The standoff lasted until 1:30 a.m. when Lee attempted to escape by breaking one of the bus's windows. He was shot with a taser and taken into custody. Parts of the victim's body had been scattered throughout the interior of the bus, while McLean's ear, nose, and tongue were found in Lee's pockets. Lee ultimately pleaded not guilty on account of mental disorder. Based on a recommendation by the psychiatrist assigned to the case, Judge John Scurfield ruled that Lee was not criminally responsible for the deadly attack. Lee spent 7 years at Selkirk Mental Hospital before he was eventually discharged in 2017. Thanks for watching. Would you rather take a 16-hour flight that returns you right back to your original location, or work out every day for 3 months without seeing any improvements in your physique? Let us know in the comments section below.